Om Sarashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Be seated, please. Okay. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. Welcome back. Welcome also to the many students attending this class online. Before we pick up the thread, there were a couple of good questions on the prior class where we talked about fire being inherent in the wood and yet being separate from the wood. So fire, this is the ancient worldview, as we said before, where they thought that fire was already waiting in the wood, waiting to be kindled, waiting to be brought out. And then Sri Krishna used that as a metaphor to describe, just as fire abides in the wood, but its manifestation depends on the nature of the wood. In the same way, consciousness abides in every living being, but the manifestation of that consciousness depends on the individual being. Now, the question about that metaphor is, even though the fire is inherent in the wood, according to the ancient worldview, we must see the fire as being separate from the wood. But if fire is inherent in the wood itself, how can it be separate? Similarly, how could consciousness be separate from the body and mind? The confusion here is with the word separate. Separate doesn't mean physically distant. Separate here means independent. So we're not talking about fire being fire. Of course, fire pervades the wood as consciousness pervades the body. But fire is separate from the wood because it's a different entity. It's a different reality. So separate in that sense. In the same way, consciousness is present throughout the body and mind, fine, but it is separate in the sense that it is utterly unlike the body and mind, and is completely independent of the body and mind. So separate doesn't mean in a different place. It means independent reality. Second question, remember we talked about, in fact, that was a very important observation at the end of the last class, that negation doesn't work at the beginning. You know, when people start their journey of Vedanta, neti, neti, you are not your body, you are not your mind, you are not your body, you are not your mind. It doesn't work like that, as you've all figured out, and as we discussed at some length in the prior class. And that is that negation is the third of three steps. The first step is self-inquiry. The second step is discovery of your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. Then and only then does that third stage of negation make sense. That's just to restate what we saw at the very end of the last class. And by the way, that's an extremely important observation. And I can't remember discussing it in a prior class, but it came out very clearly in the prior class. So, yeah, Please take note of that. Negation doesn't work unless it is preceded by self-inquiry and unless it is preceded by discovery of your true nature. Only then does that negation become meaningful. And then the question was, we call that a krama, a sequence, to use a Sanskrit word. And the question is that krama related to the Vedantic sequence of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, which is a big technical topic we're not going to discuss here. The simple answer is no, it's not related at all. In fact, those three steps are all part of Shravana. Shravana, properly understood, is a process of self-inquiry guided by the scriptures and Guru for the sake of discovering your true nature. So no relationship at all, but that krama is very, very important. Okay, now to introduce today's verses, we're Sri Krishna recognizing that the Kali Yuga is about to set in, so to speak, is giving this wonderful advice to Uddhava how to cope with the strife and chaos of the Kali Yuga, how to navigate your way through the Kali Yuga. And the sense of navigation, I think, is a helpful perspective. We need some help in finding our way through the complexities of life. If our lives were very simple, it wouldn't be a big deal. Our lives are not simple at all. And the world in which we live is not simple at all. So having guidance is very important, very helpful. And of course, in this context, the guidance Sri Krishna is going to refer to is the guidance you receive from a guru. Remember, back in verse 5, he already introduced that. We're going to come back to the importance of a guru here in just a couple of moments. But yes, so I've made this observation before. So many people question the need for a guru. To me, it just makes common sense to have. You've also heard me say we need all the help we can get. So if a skillful guru is available, why would you not want to make use of that guru's guidance? Here's a bad metaphor. If you're driving in your car and you're lost and you've got one of those GPS gadgets on it, why would you not use it, right? It's there, it's available, so you turn it on. You use that GPS. By the way, more than a few people have noticed that GPS, the G could mean guru. Anyway, that's what some people think. So, with that in mind, Sri Krishna is now returning to this topic of guru, the importance of guru, and how the guru is essential to navigate our way through the complexities of life. So we will pick up the thread with verse 12. Acharyo ranadadya syat, Acharyo raniradya syat, ante vasyuttararani, ante vasyuttararani, tatsandhanam pravachanam, vidya sandhi sukavaha, vidya sandhi sukavaha. These four quarters, four metaphors, relate to a passage from the Taittiriya Upanishad, part of the Yajurveda, that every young student of Vedanta learns by heart. This is one of the passages that are always recited. It goes, Acharya purva rupam ante vasyuttara rupam vidya sandhi pravachanagam sandhanam. So Shankara, being intimately familiar with that passage, uses that passage and actually paraphrases that passage in this verse. It's a metaphor, as you can see from the meaning. It's a metaphor about fire, and specifically about starting a fire. Remember, in ancient days, they didn't have these lighters or matches or anything, and a conventional way of starting a fire was with the pieces of wood. There'd be one piece of wood on the bottom, there'd be a second piece of wood up here, and then usually a bow and a string is what would be used. This doesn't work, by the way. I mean, you're not going to get enough you're going to get blisters on your hand before you get a fire. If you want blisters, go for it. Anyway, this is what they used to use. And here we have a metaphor. Actually, this metaphor goes back not to, I think, to the Mundaka Upanishad also, where the same sense is given, where here's the point. Let's get the big picture first, and then we'll go into the details. What you want is jnana agni, the fire of knowledge, the fire of wisdom that can burn away the ignorance in your mind, the ignorance that's the root cause for suffering. That's what all of Vedanta is about, is the removal of the suffering that is caused by ignorance of your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. So, how to kindle that jnana agni? So here we've got a nice metaphor where the adya aranihi, adya first, actually adya, here, the first or lower. This is in the first line. The lower stick is called acharya. The teacher, it's a metaphor, right? The teacher is the lower stick. The adya means adaha in this case, below. The adaha aranihi, and antevasi uttara aranihi. The antevasi, interesting word, the choice of words. Student in ancient times was referred to one who lives in, is antevasin. And lives in what? Lives in the guru's home. It was back in the days of Gurukula, where students would leave their parents' home and go and live with their gurus to learn. In a manner of speaking, we function as a Gurukula here. It's just that you have another home, and you come to this home once or twice a week for classes. That's good. This is also your home. So, antevasi is the student who lives with the guru or comes to the guru's home. So here's the beginning part of the metaphor. The lower stick represents the guru. The upper stick represents the shishya, the student. Of course, if you have a lower stick and an upper stick, do you have fire? Not without this effort. And the effort, tat sandhanam pravachanam, the sandhanam, the connection, the touching of these two, or we could maybe stretch it out and say friction between the two, is the result of pravachanam. And pravachanam, the guru's instruction, is what causes this. Now, interesting observation. I've never thought of this before. Who's doing the work here? So the guru is doing the pravachanam, but what does that upper stick represent? Shishya. So maybe, I don't know if the guru is doing this, but the shishya is really where the work takes place. And this is a little counterintuitive because many people feel, oh, the guru makes you enlightened. No way. Absolutely not. The guru can point the way. The only one who can make you enlightened is you. The only one who can discover your true nature as Satchidananda Atma is you. No guru can do it for you, but the guru steers you in the right direction. So I would suggest that this doesn't represent the guru, but the stick and the effort to make it spin, that's all representing the student, the shishya, who has to, in Sanskrit we call it matanam, this churning, and the churning we have a nice word for. It's called atma vichara, self-inquiry. So that churning, that matana, is the act of self-inquiry. The effort is done by whom? By the student. What does the guru do? What does that lower stick do? In fact, it's kind of a funny metaphor. It just lays there. Of course, the verse correctly points out that there is pravachana, there is instruction going on. So it's not that the guru is totally passive, but really speaking, the effort is undertaken not by the guru, but by the shishya. Okay. Then the final part, vidya sandhihi. And that's also from that Taittiriya passage. The sandhi, the ultimate result of the joining of the lower and upper parts, that sandhi, that connection, ultimately results in, and of course in the metaphor, it results to friction. Let's make the metaphor full. Friction results in fire. Friction created by the student, as instructed by the teacher, creates fire. Friction represents what? Self-inquiry. Self-inquiry done by the student, as instructed by the guru, results in jnanagni, the fire of knowledge. Here called vidya, spiritual wisdom. And that spiritual wisdom, of course, is sukha avaha. It brings happiness, which means it brings relief to suffering. And that's going to be a major topic as we go along. And that is, let's ask a very fundamental question. How can knowledge free you from suffering? You've learned a lot of things so far in life. Has any of those particular kinds of knowledge freed you from suffering? When you learned how to use a computer, did that free you from suffering? When you learned how to drive a car? I mean, there are benefits to each and every one of these kinds of knowledge. But none of them, separately or collectively, freed you from suffering. Therefore, someone might rightly object, well, if none of these other forms of knowledge freed me from suffering, why should I think that Vedantic knowledge, Atma Vidya, self-knowledge, is going to free me from suffering? We've had this discussion many times. Atma Vidya is an utterly different kind of knowledge. You've heard me say many times, better understood as discovery of your true self. And why is that the end of suffering comes with that discovery? Why? Because, and just the big picture that we've discussed at length before, we'll just make very briefly here, because as you know intuitively, the true source of contentment, peace, happiness, and joy lies not at Starbucks, not in a mall. You get the point. the true source of happiness and contentment lies within. The knowledge we're talking about is the knowledge that makes you discover, personally discover, that true source of contentment and peace within you. And how does that free you from suffering? That's kind of a secondary benefit, and that is when you discover the true source of contentment and peace within, you're no longer driven by raga and dvesha to go to Starbucks and the mall and all that and waste your money uselessly. So this is the idea that this knowledge frees you from suffering by leading you to discover your true nature, Satchidananda Atma, the actual source of contentment and peace. Okay, next verse he continues to talk about the Guru, the importance of the Guru. Vaisharadi sati Vaisharadi sati vishuddha. Why am I having a problem with the mirror? Vaisharadi sati vishuddha. Oh, that's why. 11 syllables. So here I am. What did they say? Do you try to put five pounds in a 2-pound container, something like that? So I'm trying to put 11 syllables into an 8-syllable meter. It don't fit. Okay, we'll try again. Vaisharadi sati vishuddha buddhir. Vaisharadi sati vishuddha buddhir. Dhunoti mayam guna samprasutam. Dhunoti mayam guna samprasutam. Gunanscha sandahya yadatma metata. Gunanscha sandahya sandahya, Swayam cha shamyat yasamit yatagnihi. Swayam cha shamyat yasamit yatagnihi. Vaisharadi, one who is skillful, referring to the Guru. So Vaisharadi, a skillful Guru. Skillful means skillful in doing what the Guru is supposed to do, leading you to personally discover your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. Now it happens that we've described that as a process of inner discovery and inner journey, and there is a road map for that inner journey. The road map, of course, is our scriptures, including Shankara's brilliant text. And these scriptures, as you know, are in Sanskrit language. So it would make sense. Vaisharadi, a skillful guru, would probably mean a guru that knows Sanskrit. And I stress this perhaps too often, and I would admit it that I'm stressing it too often, because I've seen again and again how the people who teach based on translations get in trouble. And a lot of big blunders are made because some teachers don't have direct, unmediated access to the scriptures and their commentaries, which are equally important. So Vaisharadi, I think, would include knowing Sanskrit, but not only that. So the two terms that are usually used to describe the guru, an adequate guru, a Vaisharadi guru, one who is Shastriya, one who is Shrotriya, actually is the term in the Upanishad, one who is skilled in the scriptural tradition, including knowing Sanskrit and having studied all the scriptures. But there's a second qualification that's equally important, Brahmanishtam, established in Brahman. And in general terms, we could say one who has already discovered what you want to discover. Very simple. So what kind of guru should you seek? One who is able to guide you, and one who has already discovered what you want to discover. Such a guru is Vaisharadi. And that guru is Sa Ati Vishuddha Buddhihi. And I don't like the translation I've given here is literally correct. I'm giving you a more refined translation right now. That guru is one whose buddhi, his mind, is ati vishuddha, is absolutely pure. Now, absolutely pure means what? We used these words, but we need to maybe take another step so that it becomes more concrete. And here, ati vishuddha, absolutely pure, means totally free from raga and dvesha. Many, many scriptures will point to the primary defilements of the mind, if we can call them defilements, are raga and dvesha, these compulsions to chase after what you want and the compulsion to run away from what you don't want. If the guru has really discovered what you want to discover, that guru will be absolutely free from raga and dvesha, and in that way, his or her mind is ati vishuddha, absolutely pure. So that skillful guru, dhunoti, can destroy. Oh, wow. Gurus destroy. Destroy what? Ignorance, right? Here called mayam. And maya can be used in a technical sense, and which is really quite complicated and outside our current subject matter. So just take mayam here as ignorance. Ignorance in your mind, ignorance of your true nature. And that ignorance, which is guna samprasutam. That ignorance which is samprasutam, born of guna, qualities. Remember in ancient times, instead of looking at the world in terms of matter and energy, they looked at the world in terms of sattva, rajas, tamas. We are all composed of these three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. We were born out of sattva, rajas, tamas. And when you were born you born enlightened or ignorant? Pretty obvious. So that's what he's saying here. That this ignorance, maya, this ignorance is guna samprasutam. You're born with it. It comes with the package, as they say. And you get no choice. You know, when you buy a car, you get all these choices. You can get this option or that option, this option, and they're charged differently for all these options. Here, when you get reborn, no option. Ignorance is part of the standard model. How's that? Okay. Now, next part. Gunanscha sandahya, and I mispronounced before, dahya. Gunanscha sandahya. Sandahya, after burning, we're still on our metaphor of Jnana Agni, after burning what? Gunan. Burning those gunas, the gunas which are the product of ignorance. After burning the ignorance, this is a little bit, and I don't want to stress this because it's very, very much in the realm of yukti, logic, strict logic, and something that's taught again and again is when you remove the cause, there is nothing to support the effect. It's like, the house of cards. You pull one on the bottom, the whole thing comes tumbling down. So metaphorically, that represents when you destroy the cause, the effect simultaneously goes away. In this case, the effect is the gunas. Why are you reborn? Well, you're reborn made of gunas, but why? Because you weren't enlightened in your last life. So due to ignorance, you are reborn with these gunas. You are reborn ignorant. And here, when the guru destroys that maya, that ignorance, and gunanscha sandahya, and also the guru burns or destroys the gunas, how? You remove the cause, then the effect goes away. And this is, here we need to be, you get too literal in the interpretation, you get in trouble. This body is made of gunas. This body was born due to ignorance. When you get rid of the ignorance, you get rid of the cause. Body is the effect. So why doesn't the body immediately go away when the guru destroys your ignorance? This is a commonly asked question. When you become enlightened, it's not like you wake up in some heavenly domain. You're in the same place, with the same body, with the same clothes, with the same family, with the same mortgage payments. You get the idea. So enlightenment doesn't remove all of that. Why? The simple answer is momentum. And momentum due to karma, prarabdha karma. So it's absolutely true that the cause has been removed. When that fire takes place, it's over. When the guru kindles that fire of self-knowledge, when you look within yourself and discover your true nature as pure consciousness, the cause is removed. That ignorance is removed. Thank goodness the effect hangs on for a little while due to prarabdha karma. So it's nature. So we've removed the cause, so the body lives on due to nature. However, when this body falls, that cause is gone. So there's no possibility of rebirth. This is frequently taught. So when the guru removes that ignorance, the guru also removes the cause for getting a body and another body. Not only your body is made of gunas, but what about all this? It's all made of gunas. What does Shankaracharya says, so sandahya tadatmam is tadatmakam. The meter, this is one of the problems of a shorter meter. You don't get to stick in all the syllables you want. The word is atmakam. You didn't have enough syllables? Atmam. Anyway, this is how Sanskrit works. So yadatmakam etat. Etat, this world, is also tadatmakam, made of those gunas. And so this world, swayam itself, the world itself, shamyati, goes out. Literally becomes silent. But the metaphor here is fire. Fires don't become silent. Fires become extinguished. So here shamyati can mean silenced, but here it means extinguished. Just like shamyati, samit yatha agnihi. Yatha, just like agnihi, fire. Shamyati is extinguished. Why? Asamit. When the wood is consumed. In the absence of wood, samit is a word used for the wood used for a sacrificial fire. So this is a metaphor, not of a not of a bonfire. The metaphor is of a sacrificial fire. So you go on putting wood into that sacrificial fire in addition to the ahutis, the offerings of ghee, etc. But when that wood in the fire is extinguished, the fire goes out, the fire is extinguished, the wood is gone, the fire is gone, everything is gone. What is this metaphor describing? Imagine, this is just interesting to think about. Suppose you get this fire going, doing this, and you get the fire going. And it goes and goes and goes and goes, and it consumes this. It consumes this. The upper stick and lower stick are both consumed by the flames. The upper stick and lower stick represent Shishya and Guru. My gosh, Jnana Agni destroys the Guru and Shishya. In a manner of speaking, yes. Jnana Agni destroys the world. Look at this. This is a pretty vicious fire. Powerful enough to destroy the world, to destroy the Guru, to destroy the Shishya. In what sense? First of all, this fire of knowledge destroys the world. In what sense? The world, of course, after you're enlightened, as I said, you still got that mortgage payment. The world doesn't go away. So in what sense is the world destroyed? Before enlightenment, you thought the source of happiness, contentment, and peace is out there. After enlightenment, there's no question in your mind, it's not out there. It's in here. So the world as a source of contentment and peace is destroyed by that Jnana Agni. The conclusion that happiness and contentment comes from out there, that conclusion is utterly destroyed by knowledge. So that is the sense in which Jnana Agni, the fire of spiritual wisdom, destroys the world. Not that the world goes away, but that you no longer consider the world to be the source of contentment and peace. And then similarly, this Jnana Agni destroys the Guru and Shishya in what sense? Not in a literal sense, but that, in fact, we used that word separateness before. We can use it here in a different way. And that is, the Guru's body is separate from the Shishya's body, but consciousness within is one. Go back to the wood metaphor. Remember, the ancient worldview is fire is inherent in the wood. So by doing all of this stuff, you bring out the fire from the wood. The fire destroys both pieces of wood. What's left is fire until the wood is totally consumed, meaning what's left is consciousness. When the wood is finally consumed, by the way, that represents physical death. When the wood is finally consumed, represents the death of your body, the death of the Guru's body. So then just as fire, interesting, this is the ancient worldview. When these two pieces of wood are consumed by fire, does fire cease to exist? No. Fire goes on existing in all other pieces of wood. Remember, fire is inherent in all wood, according to the ancient worldview. On the other hand, when these pieces of wood are consumed, fire is no longer manifest here. This is what the metaphor represents, and that is consciousness is present and manifest in the physical body and mind. As long as the body and mind are present, When the body and mind are gone, not that consciousness is gone. Consciousness being all pervasive continues to exist. Very nice. Okay, let's continue. The next 3 verses go together. I hope I can get them in before the end of this class. Ataisham karma kartritnam, ataisham karma kartritnam, bhoktrnam sukha dukkhayoho, bhoktrnam sukha dukkhayoho, nanatvam ata nityatvam, nanatvam ata nityatvam, lokakalagamatmanam, lokakalagamatmanam. Ata, now, esham, the only way to get the meaning of this, these are 3 verses that form one sentence. There's no rule that says a verse is a sentence. Sometimes half a verse is a sentence. Sometimes part of a verse is a sentence. Sometimes a sentence starts in one verse and ends in the next. Here the sentence spans these 3 verses, and to understand it, we have to pick up the word manyase from the next verse. Manyase. If you think, if you consider, ata, now, if you consider esham karma kartranam. Before getting into the details of these 3 verses, let's understand what Sri Krishna is going to teach us. We've, in a prior verse, observed that when that jnana agni destroys ignorance, you have no doubt that the true source of happiness and contentment lie outside in the world around you. But then, prior to enlightenment, and this is the real problem of life, prior to enlightenment, you're still driven by some raga dvesha to go to Starbucks and go to the mall. This is natural, it's undesirable, but it's completely natural. And here, Sri Krishna is trying to dissuade Uddhava and dissuade all of us. I'm smiling. He's trying to dissuade us from going to Starbucks and wasting our money at the mall. Now, yeah, there's nothing, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not criticizing if you go to Starbucks and if you go to the mall. That's not the point here. The point here, you know very well, is the conclusion that you can get happiness and contentment out there in the world. You get that extra large latte. There's there's milk in there, there's coffee in there, there's water in there. There ain't no happiness in there. You get the point. Similarly, in the mall, you see all these wonderful displays. It's all advertising, Anyway, I don't need to tell you. You know too well. So these 3 verses are Sri Krishna trying to dissuade not just Uddhava, but trying to dissuade all of us from wasting our time, wasting our effort, wasting your money in Starbucks and going to the mall, etc. And by the way, seeking outside even today, in ancient times and today, there are 2 ways of seeking happiness and contentment out there. One is the Starbucks and mall route. The other route is the religious route. What is the religious route? You invite a priest, invite a friends, and start doing some homa, some havan, and you pour lots of ghee into that fire. You do lots of rituals. Is actually pursuit of external contentment and peace. Why? Why are you doing that ritual? Various reasons. Could be to remove obstacles to happiness in this life. Could be to accumulate enough good karma to get reborn into a better loka in your next life. The point I'm making here is that just as Starbucks and going to the mall is a misdirected pursuit of permanent contentment and peace, in exactly the same way, performing rituals is a misdirected pursuit of permanent contentment and peace. Please note, I just put rituals in the same category as Starbucks and going to the mall. When those rituals are done for the sake of contentment and peace, when those rituals are done as a form of prayer, it's different. We're not talking about rituals done with a prayerful bhava, of feeling of being connected to Ishvara. We're talking about rituals being done mechanically. You hire the priest does all this stuff, you do whatever the priest tells you, and you get some punya. What bhava? No bhava. It's like it's very transactional. This is what what Sri Krishna is including, and you'll see how he includes both worldly and otherworldly pursuits, both being external. Let's see these verses now. So he criticizes in this way: Esham, for those karma kartranam who are engaged in actions. What kind of actions are they engaged in? Actions like going to Starbucks and a mall. Actions like doing rituals for the sake of accumulating spiritual gain. By the way, a very insightful teacher called that spiritual materialism. Well said. Right? Okay. Instead, actually, materialism, you're paying the priest, first of all. Secondly, you're making offerings into the fire. You're paying for those offerings. Anyway, enough. Well, let's not get sidetracked here. So, for those who are engaged in action, karma kartranam, they are also bhoktranam. They're also seeking pleasure. Why do you go to Starbucks and mall? Sukha, happiness, pleasure. Also, why do you do this ritual? For the sake of future happiness. So, bhoktranam, they all experience sukha dukkha yoho. Both sukha, happiness, and dukkha. In the pursuit of happiness and contentment out there, there's always dukkha. Why is there dukkha? You spend too much money at Starbucks and the mall, and when you're balancing your checkbook, dukkha, or you get the your credit card bill. Anyway, that's dukkha. Or when this is a classical example, you're doing this ritual, and the smoke comes up, and your eyes are burning, and tears are running down. Even with that ritual, there is dukkha. For all worldly pursuits of sukha, always mixed with dukkha. And in a very fundamental sense, there is effort required for any external pursuit. That effort is representative of dukkha. So, what about these people? These people have the conclusion of nanatvam, manyness. We are all individual human beings striving in the world for happiness, contentment, and peace. And these people also conclude, and here he's being critical, this is a criticism of conventional worldly life. When we have this conclusion of nanatvam, manyness, individuality, then not only are we pursuing happiness out there, we're also competing with each other. And that competition can get pretty serious. In some workplaces, it becomes pretty serious. Competition for worldly resources can be serious. Wars have been fought over oil in the ground. Wars will be fought over water. We haven't seen it yet, but it's coming soon. There will be a war someplace in the world over the resource of drinking water. It's coming. So all of that is a result of this conclusion of nanatvam, part of conventional worldly thought. We are all individual beings competing for limited resources. Also, these people have nityatvam. They have the conclusion of eternality. Eternality of what? Skip the first word. They have the idea of the eternality of kala, time. That's okay. They recognize as eternal agama, scriptures. That's okay. They recognize as eternal atma, true self. No problem. So in conventional thought is not all incorrect. So in conventional thought, you might consider scriptures to be internal, self to be eternal, and kala, time to be eternal. What's the problem? First one, loka. That's where the problem is. Conventional wisdom is largely correct, but in some regards incorrect. And here's where conventional wisdom goes astray. When you think loka is eternal. Now, this has several meanings. One obvious meaning is if you are naive enough not to think that you're going to die one day, loka. This loka is finite. This loka will come to an end. And to avoid thinking about that might be conventional thought, but it's wrong. It actually causes problems. We won't get into a big topic here, but it's a problem to deny your own mortality. Also, if you think you do all these rituals and you go to the other loka, you go to some heavenly realm, there's also a problem with that. You might think you go there for all time. Our Christian friends believe you go to, and Christian, Jewish, and Muslim friends believe you go to heaven, you go to paradise for all eternity. The ancient rishis rejected that view completely. They said if you go to heaven or paradise as a result of your good deeds are finite, and the result of finite good deeds cannot be eternal heaven or paradise. Okay, he goes on criticizing this conventional worldview. He says, Manyase sarva bhavanam, manyase sarva bhavanam, samsthahyatpatikiyata, samsthahyatpatikiyata, tattara kriti bhedena, tattara kriti bhedena, jayate bhidyate chadhihi, jayate bhidyate chadhihi. Manyase, we used that word before, and if you continue, if you consider, where did that continue come from? If you consider samstha, the existence, sarva bhavanam, the existence of everything around you. The existence of everything around you is outpattiki. It has arisen. It has arisen for what sake? To make you happy. Huh? The world exists for the sake of your happiness? That's a common conventional worldview. In fact, there's some biblical evidence. There's biblical teaching of dominionism, where it said in the Old Testament that God created the world for us and made us rule over the world. Very short-sighted. If we're ruling over the world, are we very good rulers or not? You get it. Okay. So if these people continuing to criticize this worldly view, if you think that the world exists for your sake, tat tad akriti bhedena, it exists in so many forms which are potentially sources of happiness. This is a conventional worldview. And also what arises is dihi, these conclusions, dihi jayate, these conclusions, this is good, that's not so good, so you stay away from that one. Here comes raga and dvesha. You are driven to pursue what you think is a source of happiness. You are compelled to avoid what you think is a source of suffering. So this conclusion leads to raga dvesha, bhidyate. There is a division. You separate, in fact, very important point. Let me not rush through this one important point. Then we'll see the last verse and conclude. The important point here is this dihi. He's referring to a conclusion, a particular kind of conclusion, vidyate, in which we divide everything in the world, not everything, we divide things largely into two categories. What are those two categories? We conventionally use the words good and bad. Good means, actually not, the etymological meaning of good is godly. That's not what we mean by when you say this food is good. You don't mean it's godly. You mean I like it. I want more of it. That's what you mean. There's raga, compulsion. And when you say this food is bad, you're not saying it's ungodly. You're saying I don't like it. You're saying it doesn't bring me happiness. And we all have this tendency to put worldly things in one category or the other. Food is a pretty obvious example of it. How about you might like some people like this kind of car, some people dislike that. I don't understand why people feel so strongly about cars. Some people do. Maybe you don't. I certainly don't. But some people, I'm a Ford person. Huh? I don't get that. Sorry, but some people are like that. But that's relatively harmless. But what is not harmless is when you put people into these two categories, good and bad. Huge mistake. Huge mistake. Think about that. People are people. And you say, but Swamiji, look what this person did. Okay, they made a mistake. Did you ever make a mistake? Okay, you get the point, right? Do you want to be judged bad because of your mistakes? Then why judge the other person bad because of their mistakes? Okay, so this is conventional thought, and this is what Sri Krishna is being so critical of, and he concludes, but the sentence finishes in his next sentence. Evam apyanga sarvesham, dehinam deha yogataha, dehinam deha yogataha, kalavayavata santi, kalavayata santi, bhava janmadayo sakrata, bhava janmadayo sakrata evam api anga. Anga is one of these very beautiful words in Sanskrit. Dear. Anga, dear. Oh, dear Uddhava. Evam api. In this way, sarvesham dehinam. For all embodied people, like all of us, deha yogataha, because of our state of being embodied, kala avayavataha, and because of the nature of time. It can also mean karma. Due to time, due to the passage of time, due to karma, due to all of these factors, bhavaha santi. Bhavaha, experiences, santi, take place. What kind of experience take place? Janma adayaha. Experiences take place like janma, etc., birth. Hey, birth is wonderful. I know many of you had children and you were delighted by janma. But in Sanskrit, the word janma is usually followed by the word mrityu. That's just a fact. Birth and death. Whatever gets born definitely dies. And this is his criticism of worldly life. Whatever you accomplish in life, it gets taken away from you. Right? When we die, whatever you've accomplished in life, whatever you've gained in life, whatever you've done, when you die, gone in an instant. It's all gone. Now, the criticism then, and not just gone, he says, asakrit. Again and again it's gone. Meaning in this lifetime, you strive for greatness, then you die. Next lifetime, strive for greatness, then you die. What's going on here? Sri Krishna is questioning our basic concept of life. And that is, eat, drink, and be merry, to use the common expression. Ridiculous. So you have all these pleasures in life, and all those pleasures will be taken away from you. And while you're alive, these pleasures, Bhartrahari, who wrote this famous Vairagya Shatakam, these 100 verses on Vairagya. So eat, drink, and be merry. We think, oh yeah, I can just eat and drink more and enjoy more. Bhartrahari observes that in the first half of your life, you eat food. In the second half of your life, food eats you. So, meaning, when you're 90 years old, food becomes problematic. Many kinds of food will hurt your stomach, and you have a gazillion food restrictions. Your doctor says, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that. So food may be a source of pleasure at one point in your life, and at another point won't. And this is the observation about life in general. Everything we hope to enjoy through our worldly efforts, all of that doesn't work in the long run. Which is to say, yes, we can receive moments of peace, moments of contentment, moments of happiness, but what we truly seek is not moments. What we seek is uninterrupted happiness, contentment, and peace. And if we think, conventional wisdom, if you think you just work hard enough that you can achieve that uninterrupted contentment and peace, you are so mistaken. So this is Sri Krishna's criticism, pretty strong criticism of conventional worldly life, worldly thinking, and he's not done yet. We'll see more in our next class. Announcements tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We have our Upadesha Sahasri class, brilliant teachings of Sri Shankara, followed at 11 by Satsanga. Please come and join us. We'll conclude with our prayers at the altar. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avamahe Kavingavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatahana Shranvan Utabasira Sadhanam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.